What if everything you think you know about the beginning of the world is only the surface of something much deeper, something hidden for thousands of years beneath the pages of a story you grew up believing you understood? Before a single word of Genesis was written, before light first touched the empty world, ancient voices claimed that a conflict older than humanity shook the heavens. Not a myth, not a legend, but a real struggle that left marks on creation itself. And if even a portion of these forgotten accounts is true, then the story of Genesis is not the beginning at all, but the aftermath of a rebellion so vast that its echoes still reach us today. Imagine a moment before time when nothing existed except God and the celestial beings He created. Not angels as people usually imagine them, but powerful spirits with roles, hierarchies, and minds capable of choosing allegiance or defiance. Some texts say that before creation was shaped, disorder had already spread in the heavens. Something broke, something resisted, something fell. The Bible opens with a simple phrase, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." But what if those words are only a doorway into a hidden history that once filled the ancient world with awe and fear? As strange as it sounds, several banned books, especially Enoch and Jubilees, describe a universe in turmoil before Genesis 1:1. They speak of councils, accusations, betrayals, and a rising tension that demanded a response from the Creator. The Watchers, a group of powerful angels assigned to guard creation, longed for freedom that crossed the boundaries God had set. Their rebellion did not begin with violence, but with desire, the desire to grasp knowledge that was not theirs, the desire to rule where they were meant to serve, the desire to reshape creation according to their own will. If that is true, then creation itself was not a peaceful beginning. It was a counterstrike, a declaration that God, not the rebels, would shape reality. When Genesis says the earth was formless and empty, many assume that means nothing was there. But banned texts describe a different possibility, a world darkened not by absence, but by the residue of heavenly conflict. A place that needed healing before it could host life, a place waiting to be reclaimed. Picture it. Darkness spread across the deep, silence but not calm, a shadow left behind by rebellion. Then a command breaks through everything. Let there be light. The moment light enters the world, it is not just illumination, it is victory. It is order pushing against something that did not want to move. It is creation beginning in the wake of a struggle that almost tore the heavens apart. The Bible gives us the outcome. The banned books show us the battle. As the days of creation unfold, they read almost like an organized rebuilding of something that had been damaged. Light separated from darkness, waters divided, land emerging, life taking form, human beings shaped with purpose. But some ancient texts suggest that humanity was more than the final step of creation. We were part of a strategy, a witness to God's justice, a reminder to the rebels that their defiance would not define the future of creation. Humans, fragile and limited, were given something the rebellious angels lost, the chance to reflect God's glory through obedience and trust. That is where the story begins to shift. Because according to Enoch, the fallen angels watched the creation of mankind with growing resentment. They observed humanity walking freely in the world they themselves desired. They saw Adam and Eve placed in a garden they could not enter. They saw a role they would never hold again, and something inside them hardened. What started as jealousy turned into a new plan, one that would reach from the heavens down into the human world. This is where Genesis and the banned books begin to overlap in ways most people never hear about. Genesis gives a brief line about sons of God who came to the daughters of humans, but the banned books give the names, the details, the intentions, the terrible consequences. They describe the watchers descending not to observe, but to interfere. They describe forbidden knowledge taught to early humanity, knowledge of weapons, sorcery, astrology, signs in the heavens that were never meant for human control. They describe unions that produced the Nephilim, giants born of corruption, being so violent and destructive that they nearly consumed the world. Suddenly, Genesis 6 is not a mysterious footnote, it is the turning point of a cosmic conflict. A moment when humanity, created to reflect God, became trapped between divine purpose and angelic rebellion. A moment when God, seeing the world sinking deeper into chaos, chose to reset creation again through the flood. But before we get there is a question that creates a powerful loop in the story, one that many people overlook. If rebellion shaped the beginning of Genesis, then could its influence still affect us today? If the Watchers defied God to corrupt humanity, then what remained after they fell? If the Nephilim were destroyed, what happened to their spirits? If creation was born in a struggle, are we still living in the aftermath of that struggle now? These are the questions that pull us deeper into the hidden history behind Genesis. Not to replace Scripture, but to reveal the scale of what may have happened before it. To understand the stakes of the story we have always known, and to consider the possibility that the forbidden books were not banned because they contradicted the Bible, but because they revealed a version of creation that was too vast, too mysterious, and too unsettling for the world at the time. If you are still here, then your mind is open enough to follow this journey into the unseen foundations of Genesis. And if this opening sparked something in you, curiosity, disbelief, or even a sense that the story is bigger than you imagined, write the word "awaken" in the comments and leave a like so this project can reach more people who search for hidden truth. What if the 7 days of creation were never meant to be read as simple steps in a story, but as revelations that hide far more than they show? What if every moment of those days held a deeper layer, one that ancient writers tried to preserve, but history quietly pushed aside? Many people look at Genesis and see a familiar sequence: light, sky, land, life, humanity. But imagine if those were not ordinary events. Imagine if they were windows into a pattern that existed long before Earth was formed, a pattern that mirrored something happening in the heavens at the same time. Before anything came into being, the universe was silent. But silence does not always mean peace. Some ancient texts say that God was not simply beginning creation, but responding to forces that had already tried to twist what he intended. When light appears in Genesis, many imagine brightness filling an empty world. But what if that light was doing something far more deliberate? What if it was not only revealing the world, but pushing back something that hoped to stay hidden? Think about the first moment of creation in a new way. Light emerges, and suddenly the darkness is no longer in control. The separation between them is not just physical, it is a declaration. It is the start of a pattern that repeats through every day that follows. Order rising from disorder. Boundaries strengthening against something that once crossed them. A world being shaped with purpose, while the remnants of rebellion linger beyond the edges of what humans can see. As the second day unfolds, another separation happens. Water from water. A space appears, a firmament stretched out like an invisible shield. Many people read this as a simple division between sky and sea, but banned texts describe the firmament as more than an empty space. They portray it as a boundary established by God to prevent corruption from reaching the heavens again, a wall protecting what was still pure, a structure that echoed the heavenly order, ensuring that rebellious spirits could not rise beyond their domain. Then the ground appears, and life begins to grow. Genesis describes the earth sprouting vegetation, plants bearing seeds, trees producing fruit. It sounds peaceful, almost gentle. but Jubilees suggests that this moment was connected to the rhythm of heaven itself. The establishment of Sabbath is tied not only to human rest, but to the celebration of angels, who honored God with a pattern older than creation. The idea that the 7 days were reflections of an eternal structure, a blueprint that heaven followed before the earth existed, adds a level of depth that changes the entire creation narrative. When the sun, moon, and stars appear on the 4th day, they do not simply illuminate the sky. According to some ancient writings, they act as signs of divine order and reminders to the spiritual world that God is the one who controls time, seasons, and destiny. The stars were understood not only as distant lights, but as symbols of heavenly beings assigned to watch over creation. Their movement across the sky was seen as testimony that God's authority reached from the smallest detail on earth to the furthest edge of the cosmos. On the 5th and 6th days, life spreads in every direction. The seas fill with creatures, the sky with birds, and the land with animals. But this is where tension builds again. As humanity is formed, something happens in the unseen world. Humanity is given an image the Watchers were never allowed to possess. Humanity is given authority they once tried to claim. Humanity is given a connection to God that no rebel spirit could ever reclaim. Some texts say the rebellious angels watched humanity with growing resentment, seeing their own loss reflected in Adam and Eve. They saw fragility, but also potential. They saw weakness, but also intimacy with God. And this contrast created a powerful spark of jealousy. It is here that curiosity deepens. If humanity was created with such purpose, why were the rebels allowed to observe? Why was there access between realms? Why were the angels allowed to witness something that would ignite their desire to intervene? Some banned books suggest that God allowed this tension not as a mistake, but as part of a larger plan. Humanity was designed to choose obedience freely, even when influence came from beyond the human world. And the Watchers, knowing what they lost, chose to try again to gain what was forbidden to them. Then comes the 7th day, the moment when God rests. Many imagine this as a pause, a simple completion. But ancient writings describe it as a proclamation to all creation, not just a moment of rest, but a reminder that nothing can override what God has established. The Sabbath becomes a seal over the act of creation, a mark that the cosmic order has been set, and the rebellion will not undo it. The 7th day is not weakness, it is sovereignty. But the deepest twist emerges from a single question. What if the days were not literal days at all? Ancient Hebrew uses the word yom, which can also mean an era, a period, or an unfolding stage of divine activity. If each day was an epoch, not a 24-hour event, then the creation narrative stretches across unimaginable lengths of time, echoing through ages where angels watched, rebelled, and fell. It turns creation into a drama rather than a sequence. A drama where God establishes his authority over every realm, physical, spiritual, and cosmic. This idea creates a loop of possibilities that raise new questions. What if creation took place while spiritual tension was still unresolved? What if every day was a strategic movement against lingering disorder? What if humanity was placed in the middle of a conflict far larger than the world they knew? Suddenly, small details gain significance. The separation of waters, the division of light and darkness, the placing of boundaries, the grounding of humanity. It all becomes purposeful, not procedural. And if the creation days were shaped by deeper forces, then what does that say about the world we live in now? Are there still remnants of that early tension hidden within the rhythms of nature? Do we still walk in a world where boundaries protect us from things we cannot see? Are there signs written into creation that we overlook because we read Genesis as history instead of strategy? There is one more question that keeps curiosity alive. If the early world was built in response to rebellion, then how did that rebellion reach the human world so quickly? The answer leads into the next chapter of this journey, where the lines between heaven and earth blur again. If this awakened something in you and made you see creation in a different way, write the word layers in the comments and leave a like so this series can reach more people searching for understanding. What if the greatest conflict in human history did not begin on earth at all, but in a realm far older, where beings of light once stood in perfect unity before something inside them shifted forever? Many people imagine angels as peaceful servants, but ancient writings describe a very different beginning. They speak of order, hierarchy, and purpose, but also of choice. And it is in that choice that the story takes a turn no one expects. Before humanity ever walked the earth, there was a moment when the heavenly realm faced a decision that would change creation for all time. Imagine a world where every being knows its purpose with perfect clarity, no confusion, no fear, no rebellion. Then imagine one thought, one question, one desire entering the mind of a powerful angel who had been trusted with a position above millions. Ancient accounts describe this angel as radiant, intelligent, admired. But admiration can become pride, and pride can become something far more dangerous. What if the first fracture in creation began not with an act, but with a thought? This is where the story shifts into a kind of tension that feels almost human. A being created to reflect God's glory begins to wonder why he should reflect at all. Why not shine by his own power? Why not rise higher? Why not claim something he believes he deserves? These questions grow quietly at first. But quiet thoughts can become storms, and this storm reaches directly into the center of heaven. According to some banned texts, Lucifer was not alone. His ambition inspired a portion of the angelic host to follow him. They saw his confidence and believed he could lead them into a new order. They saw his beauty and believed it proved he was destined for more. But what if they misunderstood what they were seeing? What if they interpreted glory as ownership instead of responsibility? The moment rebellion formed inside them, everything changed. The harmony of the heavens broke. The angels who remained loyal felt the shift instantly. The ones who followed Lucifer believed they were stepping into freedom, but they were stepping out of truth. The Bible describes the fall in a single verse, but ancient texts describe a clash that shook the very structure of heaven. Not a battle of swords, but a confrontation of authority, where allegiance determined destiny. This is where curiosity deepens. Why did God allow this rebellion to happen at all? Why create beings capable of defiance? Why give them freedom when freedom carries the risk of destruction? Some writings suggest that without choice, devotion is not real, that love without freedom is only programming. But once freedom is given, the possibility of rebellion becomes inevitable, and once rebellion occurs, judgment follows. Lucifer's fall becomes the first moment in history when separation enters creation. The rebel angels are expelled, but their exile is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new kind of danger, because exile does not erase desire. It intensifies it, and the desire that once formed in heaven now turns toward the earth. As the story moves forward, another group of angels comes into focus, known as the Watchers. They were not part of Lucifer's rebellion. They were assigned to observe humanity and protect it. They watched as humans grew, worked, loved, and multiplied. But something within them began to shift as well. The closer they came to humanity, the more they felt drawn to what they saw. Not in a pure way, but in a way that crossed the line between their realm and ours. Their fascination became desire, and desire became action. According to Enoch, the Watchers formed a pact, swearing an oath that if they rebelled, they would do so together. This pact breaks the pattern of heaven. Angels were never meant to bind themselves to each other in defiance of God, yet that is exactly what they did. The moment they made that agreement, the second great fall began. They descended to earth, but not as protectors. They descended as beings, seeking what they were never meant to have. They took human women as wives. They taught forbidden knowledge, weapons, sorcery, manipulation of nature, knowledge that humanity was not prepared to wield. They crossed boundaries that protected creation, and in doing so, they changed the world forever. The result of their actions was something that Genesis hints at in a single sentence, but banned books describe in detail. Their children, the Nephilim, were beings unlike anything the world had ever seen, giants with power and hunger that grew beyond control. They brought destruction instead of life. They consumed what humanity built. They spread violence across the earth. And humanity, caught in the middle, faced a threat they could not defeat. This raises a powerful question that keeps the viewer engaged. Why were the Watchers allowed to descend? Why did God not stop them before the corruption began? Some writings imply that God allowed it to reveal the true intentions of the rebellious angels, exposing their decisions so that judgment would be justified. Others suggest it was a test for humanity, showing how influence can twist purpose if not guarded carefully. As their actions grew worse, the heavens responded. Enoch is taken into visions where he meets the Watchers face to face. These once glorious beings now tremble, asking him to speak to God on their behalf. They ask for mercy. They ask for forgiveness. They ask for their punishment to be reversed. But the message Enoch receives is clear. Their judgment is permanent. The Watchers are condemned. Their offspring will be destroyed. The corruption they brought cannot be allowed to spread further. This moment introduces a tension that moves the story toward the next crucial event, the flood. Because the fall of the Watchers does not end when they are judged. Their influence continues through the violence of the Nephilim and the knowledge they left behind. The world becomes a place filled with chaos, where human hearts turn toward evil because of what they have been taught. What happens next is not simply a reset. It is a response to a world overtaken by forces that should never have entered it. And when God prepares to cleanse the earth, he does so not only because of human sin, but because the spiritual corruption has reached a level that threatens the entire future of creation. Before that story unfolds, we are left with one last question that keeps the mind turning. If rebellion began with angels and their influence reached humanity, then how much of what we experience today still carries traces of that first conflict? And if the Watchers fell because they desired what they were not meant to have, what does that say about the temptations we face now? If this chapter opened your eyes to the hidden struggle behind the spiritual world, write the word unseen in the comments and leave a like so this series can reach more people seeking deeper truth. What if the story of humanity's beginning is not as simple as a garden, a command and a mistake, but a chain of events shaped by forces watching from outside the boundaries of human understanding? Imagine the first breath Adam ever took. The world was quiet, untouched, waiting for meaning. He did not know who he was. He did not know where he was. He only knew that someone formed him with intention, and before he could fully understand what life meant, he opened his eyes into a reality already influenced by beings who had rebelled long before he existed. The Bible gives us a gentle picture of creation, but ancient writings describe something far more complex. As Adam stood in the garden, he was not alone. Angels moved around him, not as distant figures, but as guides and witnesses. They showed him how to walk, how to understand the world, how to speak to the Creator who shaped him. Some texts say they admired him, confused by God's decision to give humanity a place of honor they no longer held. Others say they bowed, not in worship of Adam, but in obedience to God's command. But not every angel was willing to bow. This moment introduces a tension that deepens every second the story continues. If Adam was given a role higher than certain angels, how did those angels react? How did one being in particular respond? The one who once held great authority and could not accept a human rising above him. The story of the serpent begins long before it enters Eden, and when it finally steps into the garden, it does so with a purpose that has nothing to do with curiosity and everything to do with revenge. But before the serpent speaks, Eve first enters the story. In Genesis, she is created from Adam's rib. But some ancient texts describe another possibility, one many people have never heard before. They speak of a woman created equal to Adam, formed from the same earth, standing beside him rather than beneath him. Her name is Lilith. Her story is controversial, but it raises questions that force the mind to look deeper. If she existed, why is she missing from the Bible? Why does her name appear in early traditions but vanish from later teachings? According to these writings, Lilith refused to submit to Adam. She saw herself as equal and would not accept a position she believed denied her identity. She left the garden, not by force, but by choice. Her departure created a void, a fracture in the harmony God intended for humanity. And some say her anger did not disappear outside Eden. They say she became a figure shaped by defiance, resentment, and independence. Whether her story is literal or symbolic, it introduces a pattern. The beginning of humanity is marked by conflict, not only between humans and creation, but between humans and spiritual forces. After Lilith departs, Eve is created, and Eve enters the world not into isolation, but into a place already charged with past rebellion. She is not told about the watchers outside the garden. She is not warned about the fallen beings who lost what she now possesses. She walks freely through a paradise that looks peaceful on the surface, but holds tension beneath it. This is where the serpent waits. Not a mindless creature, but a being with intent. In some ancient writings, the serpent is more than an animal. It is a vessel for a fallen angel, possibly even Satan himself. A being who refused to bow to Adam and now sees a chance to strike. But the serpent does not attack with force. It attacks with words. A question, a seed of doubt, a subtle twist that opens a door. Did God really say? Those words do not simply tempt Eve. They challenge the foundation of trust between humanity and God. What happens next is not just a mistake. It is the moment when humanity steps into the same struggle that began in heaven. Eve reaches for the fruit, not because she wants rebellion, but because she believes there is more to understand. Adam follows, not because he is deceived, but because he refuses to lose her. And in that shared moment, the world shifts. The garden does not explode, the sky does not fall, but something breaks inside them. Innocence collapses, awareness rises, shame enters, and the beings who once guided them step back as God approaches. His question is simple: where are you? Not because he does not know, but because humanity must face what they have become. Their exile from Eden is not punishment without purpose. It is protection. After the fall, God places a flaming sword at the entrance of the garden, not to keep humanity from a place they do not deserve, but to prevent them from reaching the tree of life while separated from him. If they had eaten from it after falling, they would have lived forever in that broken state. Outside Eden, Adam and Eve face a world that now reflects their inner struggle. The ground resists Adam, pain enters Eve's life. But ancient texts say they did not walk through this alone. Angels still visited them. They taught Adam how to work the earth. They comforted Eve when she wept over the consequences of her choices. And when Adam grew sick near the end of his life, an angel appeared to tell Eve that redemption would one day come, not through them, but through their descendants. Yet not every descendant would walk in righteousness. Their sons, Cain and Abel, inherit not only life from Adam and Eve, but the spiritual tension that surrounds them. Abel offers a sacrifice with sincerity. Cain offers one without surrender. And when Abel is accepted and Cain is not, something ancient stirs again. Jealousy, the same force that once turned angels against God. Cain lures Abel into the field. He kills him, and for the first time, human hands spill innocent blood. This is more than a family tragedy. Ancient writings describe the earth itself reacting to Abel's blood, refusing to absorb it, as if creation is signaling a warning. The pattern of rebellion continues. And Cain becomes the first wanderer, carrying a mark not of shame alone, but of protection, as God refuses to let anyone destroy him. From that moment, humanity splits. Cain's descendants pursue their own ways, building cities and inventions. Seth's descendants seek God and carry the promise of redemption. Two lines that grow side by side, each shaping the world in different directions. This entire story leads to a final question that creates the bridge to the next chapter. If rebellion entered the human world so quickly, and if spiritual forces continue to influence humanity after Eden, what happens when the two lines finally collide? What happens when the Watchers return, drawn to the beauty of human women? What happens when their actions merge spiritual corruption with human weakness? If this chapter gave you a new understanding of humanity's beginning, write the word origins in the comments and leave a like to help this project grow. What if the flood was never meant to be remembered as a story about rain, but as the moment when two worlds collided, one human, one not, and the earth itself became the battlefield between them? Many people imagine the days of Noah as a moral warning, but ancient texts reveal something far more unsettling. They describe a planet sinking under the weight of beings who should never have existed, knowledge that humans were never supposed to receive, and a corruption that did not begin with people, but with those who descended from the heavens with intentions hidden behind their brilliance. Picture the world before the flood in a way you may never have considered. Humanity is growing, families are forming, cities are being built. But something feels wrong, as if life is expanding. In the wrong direction, people begin to notice strange patterns. Giants walk the land, towering over ordinary men. Violence spreads without reason. Hunger increases not because food is scarce, but because something is consuming the earth faster than it can replenish. The world is not only wicked, it is breaking. This is where the banned books connect the pieces that Genesis leaves unexplained. They describe the Watchers not only teaching forbidden knowledge, but reshaping humanity's path. They teach warfare, cosmetics, spells, astrology, and manipulation of nature. They present their knowledge as gifts, but every gift carries a hidden cost. Humanity begins to believe they have advanced, but advancement without wisdom shifts the balance of creation. And the Nephilim, the offspring of angels and humans, begin to take what they want by force. The descriptions of these giants vary, but they share one common trait. No matter how strong they were, their hunger was stronger. They consumed everything, animals, crops, and eventually people. Entire regions fell under their influence. It is here that the tension rises, because the earth itself cries out. According to Enoch, creation begins to groan under the weight of corruption. The ground is soaked with violence. The skies feel heavy. Even the animals behave unnaturally. Humanity is no longer steering its destiny. This is where Noah enters the story. not as a perfect man, but as a man untouched by the spreading corruption. His lineage remains pure, not only physically but spiritually. He is a quiet figure, barely noticed by the world around him. Yet heaven sees him clearly. God speaks to him, not with thunder or signs, but with instructions that seem impossible. Build an ark large enough to preserve the future. Try to imagine Noah's confusion. Why him? Why now? Why build something so massive when the sky is clear and the earth still feels stable? But Noah obeys, not because he understands, but because he senses something approaching. Every nail he drives, every plank he shapes, becomes an act of resistance against a world surrendering to chaos. Meanwhile, the banned texts say that the fallen angels sense what is coming. The watchers panic. They see Noah's work as a threat, a sign that their time is ending. Some try to plead for forgiveness through Enoch, but the verdict has already been given. Their offspring, the Nephilim, realize too late that their strength will not save them from judgment. The world they dominated is slipping away. When the sky finally breaks, it is not a gentle rain, it is a collapse. Water erupts from the ground, torrents fall from above. The oceans rise, the rivers overflow. Everything that once felt certain begins to dissolve. The giants struggle against the rising waters. People cling to whatever they can find, but the judgment is not random. It is precise. The flood does not come only to destroy, it comes to cleanse. Inside the ark, Noah and his family hear the sounds outside, the screams, the roaring, the chaos, but they cannot stop it. They are safe, but safety does not erase the weight of watching the world fall apart. The ark becomes a place of waiting, floating above the remnants of a world that forgot its purpose. Days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months. The silence becomes almost unbearable. Yet even in the middle of destruction, the promise remains. When the waters begin to recede, the earth feels unfamiliar. Everything is new, but also empty. Noah steps out, not into a restored paradise, but into a world that must be rebuilt from nothing. And here the story reveals a twist often overlooked. According to ancient writings, God gives Noah new knowledge, not forbidden knowledge, but instructions on how to live in a world that now carries the memory of what went wrong. Sacrifice is introduced, covenants are established, boundaries are set. The rainbow becomes a promise, a sign that destruction will never again come in the same way. But the story does not end with peace. Because some texts say the spirits of the Nephilim could not die with their bodies. They became restless beings, what later traditions call unclean spirits. Entities without form, wandering the earth, influencing humanity in subtle ways. If this is true, then the flood did not erase their legacy, it only changed their shape. Then comes the moment humanity unites again. They gather in one place, speaking one language, building a tower that reaches toward the heavens. At first, it seems harmless, but the intention behind it reveals something familiar: pride, ambition, and the desire to control divine realms. The Tower of Babel becomes a human reflection of the rebellion once seen in heaven. Nimrod, the ruler at its center, drives the people forward. Some texts describe him as more than a king, someone who sought to challenge God directly, someone who wanted to open a pathway to the heavens for his own authority. As the tower rises, the tension builds. Will humanity repeat the same mistake as the Watchers? God descends, not with destruction this time, but with a different strategy. He confuses their language, breaking their unity and sending them into the world to prevent a new corruption from taking hold. Babel becomes the turning point, where God decides not to allow humanity to reach power they are not prepared to wield. From this scattering, one man is chosen, Abraham. He does not build towers, he does not seek power. He listens, and because he listens, God reveals something different, something not based on judgment, but on relationship. Abraham receives promises that shift the direction of history, land, descendants, blessing. But what banned texts add is even deeper. They describe Abraham witnessing visions of heaven, seeing the battle between good and evil, understanding that his life is part of a much larger plan. And then comes the darkest chapter, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. These cities do not fall because of ordinary sin. They fall because they become centers of spiritual corruption, places where justice collapses completely. Angels arrive, not to judge blindly, but to rescue the few who still hold on to righteousness. Lot struggles to leave. His wife looks back. The fire falls. The cities burn. And once again, humanity is reminded that choices have consequences. All of these stories create a single thread. When humans and spiritual beings collide, the world changes, sometimes through judgment, sometimes through mercy, but always with purpose. If this chapter deepened your understanding of why judgment came and what still lingers from those ancient days, write the word floodline in the comments and leave a like to help this series reach more people searching for truth. What if the end of Genesis was never meant to close a story, but to open a doorway into mysteries that connect the beginning of creation with the destiny of the world? Most people read the final chapters and see closures. Jacob blessing his sons, Joseph reconciling with his family. But ancient writings suggest these scenes hide messages that point far beyond their lifetimes. They hint at patterns, warnings, and promises that link the first breath of Adam with the future of humanity. And if those messages are real, then the ending of Genesis may be the key to understanding everything that comes after. Imagine hearing that a man walked with God so closely that he did not experience death at all. Not a myth, not a symbol, but a real event that left the world wondering where he went. Enoch appears briefly in the Bible, but vanished from the earth in a way no one else ever has. The banned books expand on this moment, describing Enoch being taken into the heavens, not as a guest, but as a messenger. He is shown realms, angels, judgments, and visions that stretch across time. He becomes a witness to events that do not unfold for thousands of years. And one question rises immediately. Why him? Why did God choose Enoch? What did he see that humanity was not yet ready to understand? The story moves forward, and another man steps into the mystery. Jacob, running from his past, sleeps with nothing but a stone beneath his head. Yet in that moment of fear and confusion, the heavens open above him. He sees a stairway, a bridge connecting earth to heaven, with angels moving up and down in a pattern that feels alive. He sees God standing above it, speaking promises that stretch beyond Jacob's life, reaching into the future of nations not yet born. Ancient writings say this stairway showed Jacob not only angels, but the spiritual movement that shapes human destiny. A system of guidance, protection, judgment, and blessing. A design that has never stopped functioning. But Jacob does not receive only visions, he receives prophecy. At the end of his life, he calls his 12 sons and speaks. Over them, he does not give instructions, he gives predictions, statements that describe not who they are, but what their descendants will become. Judah receives a promise of kingship. Joseph receives words that describe abundance, strength, and endurance. These blessings do not sound like simple encouragement, they sound like revelations. And when compared with ancient texts from outside the Bible, these blessings appear connected to a larger plan, one that leads directly to a future ruler, a chosen leader whose authority extends not only over Israel, but over all nations. Joseph's story deepens this connection. Sold by his brothers, betrayed, imprisoned, forgotten, yet every step of his suffering leads him closer to a position that saves countless lives. The Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, a banned text, describes Joseph as someone chosen not only to save Egypt, but to demonstrate how suffering can be transformed into purpose. His dreams were not accidents. His rise was not luck. His suffering was not meaningless. Every moment moved him toward a destiny that pointed to something greater, a foreshadowing of the one who would come later, rejected by his own people, yet rising to bring life to all nations. Throughout these stories, one theme repeats. God reveals glimpses of the future long before the future arrives. Enoch sees the judgment of angels. Jacob sees the bridge between realms. Joseph sees the famine long before it comes. And each revelation points toward a final question that lingers over the ending of Genesis. If God revealed so much to them, what did he reveal to humanity through their stories that we have not yet understood? This is where the banned books add a layer of depth. Enoch's visions of the end times describe a world where justice returns, where corruption is removed, where a righteous figure rises to restore creation. The Testament of the Patriarchs describes a coming leader from Judah who will bring peace, unity, and restoration. Jubilees describes a future in which heaven and earth align once again, and the chaos that began with rebellion is finally undone. These writings are not replacements for Scripture, but expansions, echoes from ancient communities who believed Genesis was not the start of something small, but the blueprint for the entire story of humanity. The more you read, more one realization grows. Genesis does not end with closure. It ends with expectation. It ends with a family carrying a promise. It ends with God guiding a people toward a future he already sees. It ends with hints that the battle that began before creation will one day be resolved. And it ends with the sense that everything we have explored, from the Watchers to the Nephilim, from Eden to Babel, from Noah to Abraham, is only the first layer of a much larger design. The emotional weight of Joseph's final words to his brothers captures this perfectly. He tells them, God will visit you. Not he might, not he could, he will. Joseph believes that God's promises do not rest on human success or failure. They rest on a plan older than creation itself, a plan that moves through generations, through nations, through spiritual conflict, through every rise and fall of human history. And if that is true, then the end of Genesis is not a conclusion. It is an invitation to continue the story, to search deeper, to recognize that the same God who spoke to Adam, walked with Enoch, wrestled with Jacob, and guided Joseph is still moving through the world today. And the same spiritual forces that influenced ancient history may still influence the world now, not in obvious ways, but in subtle patterns that echo the beginning. The question that remains is simple but unsettling. If Genesis reveals the foundations of everything, what are we missing by reading it only as history? What mysteries still lie hidden in its final chapters? And what role does humanity play in the parts of the story that have not yet unfolded? If this final chapter opened your mind to the deeper layers inside Genesis, write the word "continue" in the comments and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. And if you want to keep exploring these mysteries with us, make sure you subscribe to the channel to receive every episode as soon as it is released.